my life was quite miserable. I was in deep pain. I didn't know who I was. So I thought I had to do something about it because I was deeply lonely and just had this existential pain within. And I started two things. One, I was getting into astrology because it's a wonderful language to give some answers about who am I and what's the purpose in life. And then I also started my first psychotherapeutic training. I was what I would call, I was quite fucked up in my emotional being. So I really needed a lot of work. I was deeply lonely and was not really able to connect with people. I was having an experience that Earth was some kind of a hard labor, and I had really a hard time to settle in here and just being happy to be a human being. And then I discovered meditation, and meditation was like coming home. And it was a really a simple type of meditation that Assagioli would recommend. It was a creative meditation, a meditation on the sun in the heart center. I was told that everybody has a sun in the heart center, and if you go down into your sun and discover this sun, you will discover that it emanates all the qualities that you would like. And I really needed love at that time, so I was meditating in my heart. For 10 years, every day, I was sitting in the heart center and just, from the inside out, gradually started to light up my being. I went into also the esoteric community in Denmark, the theosophical circles, and this was the place I first heard about Assagioli. And particularly his book, The Act of Will. And I found it profoundly wise. I've never heard anything like it. All the different stages of the will, the different aspects of the will, the different levels of the will. I think this man, he must be profoundly wise. But at that time, I also worked in the social psychiatry as a consultant. Worked with mentally ill, and this was my major focus in life at that point. Beside my work as a teacher and meditation instructor up through the 90s. But then I had a major crisis again around 2000, 2001. And it was all about that. I think it was so hard for me to practice what I preach. I had all these lofty ideals about, saving humanity and blah, blah, blah. But I found myself having all these reaction patterns, all these difficult aspects where I separated, and I couldn't really see myself as being a good role model. So I think I have to do something about it. And then I went back to psychosynthesis, and I discovered Humanova in Malmö. And when I first visited Malmö, then it was like coming home. It was just like, this is what my life is about. When I first started to understand the theories, and I really vividly remember my first session in the group when we did a sub-personality exercise. Going down in the basement and into and opening the door, and there I found this lonely preacher that has shut the door for the world, and I had a conversation with this guy, and I just started crying there, and everybody was there for me, and they created a loving space, and I think this was what Jung would call some kind of initiation. It was an initiation into psychosynthesis, the whole concept of sub-personalities. And of course also the concept of self, you know, that inside of me there is this place where I can observe, where I can be a loving witness to whatever emerges in my being. And after that, I just knew that I have to go deep into psychosynthesis. And I have always been very passionate about understanding the core of psychosynthesis, what Assagioli meant about it. You know, I think there are so many brilliant writers out there. Piero Ferrucci is definitely one of them, and many others. But I really was deep into Assagioli's core teaching, because I recognize, and I guess you too, that he's a true mystic. Besides, he is a very skillful psychologist. He's actually, for me, a deep mystic. You know, he has experienced what he theorized about. You can just, when you read his word, for me, it's like it comes from a deep place within him. And then I decided for a couple of years after I've started, you know, I went to NIP and had 3 years of training there, and then I went to the Psychosynthesis Trust in London and wrote my master thesis in psychosynthesis there. And then I was asked to come to NIP in 2014 to 16 and be the rector at this place. And but unfortunately, it was not. You know, the environment was not. We were not able to really make it run. So we decided to close it in 2016. Mm-hmm. And but in that time, I had a lot of work writing the first book about psychosynthesis, The Soul of Psychosynthesis, and this will be this will be the focus of my lecture today. The 7 core concepts of psychosynthesis. I think perhaps the most important paper Assagioli has ever written was the small paper about his statement on training, where he defined what is psychosynthesis. And in this paper, it was written shortly before he died. In the 70s, you know, there was it was a very vague concept of psychosynthesis. Everybody thought that they were doing psychosynthesis if they were doing visualization work. So there was a need of a structure and some kind of a definition about what is the core of psychosynthesis. And Assagioli defined it in this paper. And some talks about it as his last will. So I think if you haven't read this paper, you should really read it. And it's on my website, kennethsorensen.dk. There's 65 English articles on psychosynthesis, and this paper is also there. He defines 7 core principles. And the first principle is about disidentification. And if we really enter into this concept, we find out how deep it is. Actually, disidentification is about discovering what's not the self in order to discover the self. Because Assagioli's primary, that's my interpretation, Assagioli's primary point is that we have to find the center. And the center is the point of pure awareness or pure self-consciousness and will. And in his article about the self, I think it's called something, Conversation about the Self, he speaks about this concept that the most profound and important aspect of psychosynthesis is the concept of self and finding the center. And why is this center, this point of pure consciousness, why is it so important? It's so important because it's the starting point from where we can integrate or synthesize all the different aspects of our being. So if we can find ourselves as a loving observer, this is in an interview with Sam Keen from 1974. He talks about the loving observer. So the self, when we discover ourselves as the observer, we discover that actually our fundamental essence is love. We are this loving observer that holds or contains what we have inside of ourselves. So when we find this center, we are able also to recognize all the different voices within us, all the different sub-personalities within us. It is from this place, the center, that we train ourselves to disidentify from all the different sub-personality. And why do we disidentify? Because when we disidentify, we are able to accept and love the sub-personalities. We have to create this distance between ourselves and what we are influenced by, the sub-personality. And when we make this distance and start just to observe and accept, we can start doing something about it. Instead of having the sub-personalities up in our heads, and we are controlled about it, then we can start having the sub-personalities out here and start just to look at them, listen to them, find out what are their needs, what are their behavior, and we find a place where there is freedom. Freedom from unconsciously just repeat the old patterns. Does this make sense? Okay. And actually, the technique of disidentification is so deep. It's part of many Eastern traditions, Vipassana, and other traditions that train the yogi or the meditator to in some way step back and letting go of whatever arises in consciousness. And if we really practice this in retreats, I've done some long retreats, where you sit for 10 hours every day and just sitting and observing whatever arises in consciousness. And then we actually discover, if you let go all the time and start to observe consciousness itself, suddenly at some point your consciousness will expand and you will realize yourself as consciousness itself, as some kind of a pure, connected awareness, being right here now. And from that point of view, from that beingness, you really realize the profoundness of the teaching of psychosynthesis. So there is the level of self at the personal level. There we can observe our sub-personalities, emotional states, mental states, whatever arises in consciousness. But at some point, when you continue to just observe consciousness itself, you will experience this expansion of consciousness. And what can you use? What is the practical use of this then? it gives you a realization that you are connected. There's no doubt. You are connected with everything that is alive. What's looking inside and outside my eyes is looking outside your eyes. There's only one consciousness. And you know, we have heard it all many times, there's only one consciousness, one humanity, but it's actually true. It's actually a basic fact. And Assagioli knew this, and he created a psychology around this deep Eastern concept of the self. And disidentification is, in some way, the first step toward that realization. Consciousness as a loving observer. Does this make sense? So when I practice psychotherapy, of course I'm not introducing a concept like you have to wake up to the one consciousness of it all. But I always tell my clients that I believe that inside of you there is an aware being. You can be aware of everything that is happening inside of you, and I would like to point to that place within you, because if you learn to find that center and to be centered, then you can see that a lot of your thoughts, a lot of your emotional is actually not yours. This is something you have taken in from society, family patterns, or whatever. And Assagioli suggests in his book on psychosynthesis that we start doing this self-identification exercise as soon as possible. And it's actually possible to, when you work with an awareness-based psychotherapy where you train your client to be aware in the here and now, and to notice, be aware of what arises when you speak about this pain. Where do you feel it in your body? What type of emotional states do you experience right now? What type of mental states do you experience right now? You can actually guide people into this center where we can learn them to be present within what is. And I think this, if we can train our clients and ourselves to be present with what is, we have really done a great job. Because being able to be present with what is, it demands that we can accept and love whatever is. And it also demands that we can disidentify in the moment. And I have not have any clients that were not able to, in some measure, to find that ability to observe what is going on. And sometimes we can use all the external techniques, you know, the chair work, and bringing people out on the chair, back in the observer's position, and all these type of methodology to help them disidentify and help them identify as the loving observer. And it's such a powerful thought to have. You know, I always speak about the loving observer again and again and again to my clients in order for them to start thinking about themselves as a loving observer. It's the basis of self-love. When we realize that actually I am a point of love. And I think this is the profound discovery of Assagioli when speaking about disidentification, which is the first concept, and the self, which is the second concept. Is that clear? The next concept is about the will. And I have a very definite way of speaking about the will. I always talk about the will to be self. Everybody has a will to be self. It is the authentic urge within every human being. The will to be whoever I am, and the will to choose my identity. So the will is not a concept. The will is actually a living force within everybody. It is a living force that demands to express itself. And when we start listening to that force, this will to be self, we know who wants to not be oneself. I think it would be a pathology to really want to be somebody else. And there's a lot of pathology in society. But I think our work as psychothenticists, people must be to turn people inwards and point, no, you have a divine obligation, no, you have an obligation to be you, because there's only one you. And when we teach the people to, or our clients, to listen to that strong voice, the voice of authentic, and try to define what will it say to be really oneself. It's really difficult because we know that some of the self-images we have built up can be false, because they are based on what other people have told us and illusions. But if we start really listening to this will, and we take a short, break every day and start listening to this voice and this force, then we can start recognizing the force, the will to be self. And then we understand that our identity is actually something that we are going to choose. Who we are is a choice. And by choosing what value systems we want to believe in, what needs we are going to express, what resources and talents we are going to use, what our life objectives is, when we really find the obligation and also the discipline to start exercising the will, then we are on the right track. But so many people is afraid of the will. And why? Because it's quite scary to be oneself, because it has consequences. When we start to say no to people around us, no to all the inauthentic behavior, and start really exercising what we believe in, then it has consequences. And we will feel this when we experience the will. We will very often also experience all the subpersonalities within that is attached to the external world, attached in a way that where we need appreciation, we need to be loved, we need to be popular, whatever it is. And this will is not interested in popularity. It's just interested in being who I am, no matter what the consequence. So it's actually quite frightening to experience this very powerful point within. So the will is not a concept. The will is a living force to be recognized. And I think at this point, before we move on, I think it would be good to have just a short meditation, 5 minutes, to experience the loving observer and the will. So if you are observe your breath and let go of everything right now and just center your awareness around your breath. And start connecting with your body. And observe the condition of your body, how it feels. Bring your full attention to your body. And breathe through the body. And love your body. And be aware that you are the loving witness. You are the loving observer. And right now and here, embrace your body. And if there's pain, just accept it. Breathe through it. Now start observing your emotional state. And breathe through your emotion and down into your body. And allow your emotional state to be precisely as they are. Accept your emotional states. You know you're the observer. And start embracing all your emotional life, accepting whatever is. Breathe through your emotions down into your body. And let go of your emotional states. Just let them be. Now start observing your mental life, all the different thoughts within your consciousness right now. Observe the inner commentator, the voice that comments on the exercise. And just let go of it. And start accepting whatever thoughts you may have. Breathing through the mental, into your emotions, down into your body. Becoming still, aware, loving whatever is within you. There's nothing to do besides observe, accept, and breathe through. Observe, accept, And breathe through the mental, emotional, and your physical body. Find this place within this center. Where you just love whatever arises, to breathe through it and let go. You are this awareness, the loving observer, and not the content of your awareness. You're the light. And right now, you turn your attention to the decision to be here right now. At some point, you made a choice, the choice of coming here and be here right now. So you are right here because you choose to be right here. I guess it was a free choice. There's a will in you, a will to be right here. Listening to psychosynthesis, meditating. Feel into this will. The will that made you decide to come right here. You could have done so many other things, but you decided to be right here. This force, this will, is how you define your life. You choose to be right here. You choose the people who you want to be around. You choose your work. You exercise your will. This is the will to be self. Take a deep breath. Let go and return. This short exercise is very simple. And when you have a client, very often they experience some kind of despair or pain, and they want to have some help to get through it. Of course, some come with a wish, can you fix me? And there is no fix, but there is a path. And the path is awake to who you are, discover who you are. What are your core values? What are your true needs? And if we can help them just to realize this observer, this loving witness, and their will to be who they are. We have greatly influenced their life. And I think psychosynthesis is much more than, you know, a conversation and a healing and where you get and then you get fixed. No, psychosynthesis is giving the clients tools for life. Tools for life. When I speak with my older clients and we speak perhaps about what was important, it was these techniques. No, it's not techniques, it's a philosophy, it's a wisdom. Psychosynthesis is a wisdom about the self. It's pointing out reality. And I think it's so profound that Assagioli speak about these 7 core concepts as facts. He talks about them as facts. You know, he loves to be a scientist. And they are facts. If you make some introspection, you will see there is actually an inner observer, if you look after. There is actually a will to be self. You have an ability to disidentify. It's not a theory. It's a basic fact. And people feel that. And they learn to speak to their different voices from within this center. And it's skill for life. It makes them able to live a more true, a more powerful, a more loving life. The next concept is about synthesis. And synthese.
Ja.
And it's sure that synthesis is profoundly important. You know, as Jolie called his psychology, psychosynthesis, because it's about wholeness. It's about creating wholeness. And synthesis is not just something that is inside of every individual. Synthesis is some kind of a cosmic force. Assagioli believes that the whole world is experiencing an evolutionary force that tries to bring people together, all of humanity together. In one, this was his grand vision, the supreme synthesis. So there is a force within every human being in the whole of the earth and cosmos, if you like. That was his belief system. That has this power to unite through love and will. The 2 most important energies within us, according to Assagioli, is love and will. And love and will creates synthesis, wholeness. I really don't know what synthesis is if you really get into the details. But I know how it is experienced. When we experience synthesis, we experience flow. Before synthesis, we experience conflicts. When clients come to us, they have some conflicts. And I'm sure everybody in here has experienced conflicts between opposing elements within us. We have this idea of who we are, but we are not able to live it. Why not? Because we have some old voices that is very, very difficult to manage. So we are not master in our own house. And this is old news, you know. St. Paul in the Bible talked about all the good things I want to do, I do not, and all the bad things I don't want to do, I do. I'm a sinner, was his. So it's an old problem. It is so hard to really express your true, authentic identity because we have all these opposing forces within. But we have also all the gifts to their resolution. And for me, and for Assagioli, it's love and will. If we want to create wholeness, we must start by observing what is and start loving it. And when we start loving whatever is, we create an organic field, we create a harmonious field where we start to love what we have repressed, all our shadow element. And I think the first approach to all the shadow material is to observe it and accept it. And it can take some time. And I think we as psychotherapists, we must have this ability to help the client hold that in a loving space. To create this atmosphere of acknowledging the anger, the hate, the despair, whatever it is, come up to the surface. And we also know that whenever we see something in love, it starts to change. Because love attracts alike. Within the core of every subpersonality, there is a core within any subpersonality that responds to love. So when we create this loving field, we start to draw out the love potential in this subpersonality. And there are so many ways we can do it. We can draw it, we can speak with it, we can identify with it, and just let it be. But love is not enough. It's not okay to, let's say, if I have some violent tendencies, I like to hit people. It's not enough that I just accept it and continue to hit people. But it's the first step that I'm starting to, seeing my behavior, accepting that I have this behavior. But we also need a different approach, and this is where the will come in, and the next principle of ideal model. We need a new vision of who I would like to be. What is my authentic self? I don't want to be a person going around in the city and hitting people. No, I actually want to be a much nicer person. And this is where the fifth element, the ideal model. And what is an ideal model? An ideal model is a realistic picture of what we could be. If we bring in our discipline, we bring in our love, we bring in our honest will to make it through. And I actually believe that the ideal model work is very underestimated in psychosynthesis theory. I find it profoundly important to know what the client's vision of a true identity is. and helping the client to define what is authentic for you. And there are many different authentic expressions. What is the authentic mother role? What is the authentic role as a wife or a lover? What is the authentic role, professional role? You know, we have so many different roles in life, and they are roles, but they become authentic when we bring in our being. Right now you see, you're not seeing Kenneth Sørensen, the whole Kenneth Sørensen, that's for sure, but you see me as a teacher. And the teacher is a role, this is a role. And I try to bring as much of me, my authentic qualities, into that role. And the same is true for the client. We must help them to define what's the purpose, where are we going with this therapy? What's the goal? When are you satisfied? We have to define that. Because when the client say, okay, I would like to be able to be a better man. I have some male clients working with male identity and problems related to that, and they want to find out what will it say to be a man. And of course we cannot use all the stereotypes. We have to define. He has to define for himself what is authentic for him. And this is where the ideal model comes in. And if you can make a drawing of this image, and we can make some exercises, you know, there's a lot of visualization exercises where you see your future self. And actually I think because the ideal model is so important in relation to create synthesis in a particular area, because it is where we are heading towards, and we bring love into it and we bring discipline into it. Does this make sense? Yes. I would like to share a very short exercise I use also with my clients in order to define what are my future self. And it's quite effective. So we will use 5 minutes to just enter this exercise and then try it out, okay? Okay, sit and relax. And now identify as the loving observer, just being right here now. And start observing your breath. Connect with your body and breathe through your body. And let go of your body. Just let it be. Observe your emotional state. And just accept whatever is present right now. Breathe through your emotions into your body. Observe your mental life, the thought forms. Just let them pass like clouds in the sky. Accepting whatever is present in your mental life. And breathe through the thought forms into your emotional life, into your body, and let go. Now visualize the sun within your chest. A warm, loving sun opening your chest, radiating love and beingness. Just settle and let go into this beautiful sun, radiating your loving nature. The sun starts to expand, and it includes your body in golden emanations. It penetrates all the cells of the body. And your sun starts to embrace your emotional life. Surrounds you. And the sun is shining from within. And the golden rays now embrace all your mental life. You're resting within this sun of love. There's nothing to do. You're relaxing, letting go into this beautiful fragrance of love. Now you see that from your heart center and from the sun there extends a golden path in front of you out into this distance. The sun creates a golden path in front of you. And out there you see a little black spot. This is your future self, who you might be if you truly loved yourself. You start to recognize this future self of you. And the spot becomes a silhouette. And you send all your blessings, all your love to this silhouette of you. And you invite it into your heart.
silhouette becomes bigger. And now you start to sense and feel your future self. And it approaches you. And now you start to sense the qualities of your future self, your potential being. There's a love connection between you and your future self, a longing for each other. Now you are having an eye contact, and you start to fall in love with each other, eye to eye. You see the goodness, the beauty, and the truth within your future self. A close friendship between you and your future self is starting to establish itself. And now you ask your future self, what is the first step I must take in order to approach you? And listen to the silent whisper. Your future self is an ideal model of what you might be. If you truly love and will to be. Now ask this future self to walk into the sun in your heart. Let it enter into the depth of your being. And the two of you is now one. An energy of will to be, an energy of love. And we relax into the present. And without closing the heart, we're just opening the eyes. And return. from this perspective, we can say that we need to create a synthesis between our present identity and our future identity. There is a gap between who we are now and our potentials. And you can say that the synthesis we are creating is between the middle unconscious, where most of us is living our daily life, and the higher unconscious. So this could be an ideal model coming from the superconscious. And it is setting a goal for your life. It's some kind of a guiding star. And sometimes these ideal models can be so potent and powerful that they guide your entire life. Because they carry some very familiar qualities that you know, this is my true self. And to have such a guiding star is so important when we enter the world and all the chaotic and all the pressures that come upon us. If we have to navigate and stay true to ourselves, we have to be anchored in a purpose and we must have a guiding star. Because there's so many powerful people out there that would like to control our life, if they could. In our relationship, in our work life, everywhere. People want our life energy, not because necessarily they are bad people, they just like to be in charge. But psychosynthesis learn us to be in charge of ourselves. And it's so important. Of course, to bring in such a future self and start living it will bring up a lot of old self. An old identification from the subconscious. It's the law of polarity. So whenever we have a realization and awakening to some potential, we can be absolutely sure that the opposite will emerge. It's a law. So we have to, in some way, when we have taken a step forward, we have to go backwards and clean up, if you know what I mean.
What's left on the beach?
Of course, some of us could be, try to just transcend it all, and we talk about spiritual bypassing, not look at all what's beneath. But if we are here to express spirit in our physical life, we need to clean up the past. So the future self will always confront and bring up the past self. And our ability to harmonize, to bring out the good there is in the past and use it for the future. That's the goal of psychosynthesis. Does that ring a bell? Yeah. So for me, it's always 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Always. Yes. The 6th concept is the superconscious. The superconscious. The superconscious is whenever we aspire to a life of meaning and goodness and make a difference in the world, we are under the influence of the superconscious. The soul inside of us works through the superconscious, brings in inspiration, brings in qualities, bring in ideal models, because in the superconscious we have the seeds of our future self. We can download these seeds if we dare, because the more we bring in the superconscious, our visions, our ideals, the more we have to purify our basic unconscious in order to express it. Does that make sense? And of course, you don't need to meditate in order to connect to the superconscious. But it's a good thing to meditate. But it's not necessary. There's many very extroverted persons that bring ideas and qualities in when they are running in the forest or walking in nature, under the shower, or wherever they're finding their spot of being. And this is where Assagioli speaks about the 7 ways to the soul. Some take the heaven by force, like through will and power. The great politicians, that try to change the world through law and order and political ideas, is on that approach. And all the teachers and the healers are on another approach. They do good in the world through insights and through illumination. And people like Einstein and all the great thinkers in the world, they bring in the content of the superconscious through their bright ideas, through art, through literature, through culture. And other people bring in it through art. Other people through science. And other people through religion, spirituality. And some of the master builders of the world, the great architects that create beauty on earth by establishing new societies. So there are many ways to live the life of the soul. And this is what Assagioli speaks about, the 7 ways to the souls. And I have actually written a book about it, Integral Meditation. It's also in English, and it covers the 7 different types of meditation connected to these 7 approaches. Another excellent book about the 7 ways is Piero Ferrucci's book called Inevitable Grace. It's a masterpiece, and it was actually a book that Assagioli intended to write, but Piero Ferrucci took it up, and it's a biography of famous people and their spiritual breakthroughs. And he shows how the scientists, the artists, and the religious people and the politicians, how they all had their breakthroughs on 7 different ways. I can really recommend it. And the last concept is about the soul, or the higher self, or the transpersonal self. And very shortly, Assagioli speaks about it, that it cannot be explained, it has to be experienced. It's an experience. But so much can be said that our soul is pure consciousness. And when we have a glimpse of it, we will experience ourselves as a widespread, awake, conscious field in connection with everything. And we will see that our personality is just like a sand corn of our identity. The story we talk about, the Kenneth Sørensen sitting here, is so small in comparison to this field of consciousness that the soul is. But the soul is also force. The soul is also a will to good. The soul is also a power to good. So whenever we enter into the deepest mystery, we know that I have a particular purpose. You could call it a dharma. There's a meaning with my life. There is a particular expression of qualities that I'm here to express. And it is in resonance with this larger field of awareness. So I see that the totality of humanity is like we are point of lights within an interconnected sphere of network. And we all have to find the quality of light we are and express it. And I think this is something of tremendous beauty which Assagioli gave us. So the spiritual path is for me and for Assagioli not so much getting out of this world and having a beautiful spiritual experience, getting out in the woods and disappear and just living nirvana. No, spirituality is about bringing the light into the world. So it turns the spiritual process upside down. We are here to anchor and manifest all the potentials and qualities we are. And I guess this was actually perhaps the closing words for tonight.
Thank you.
First I want to thank you, because this is exactly what we needed. I think it's great, and it's not too often it is this aspect of what you were talking about we do talk about, and I think it's great. It's about the time. So thank you very much. And then the other question is that you are talking about future self and present self, and I was just a bit thinking the future self is already here, so this road is like extending the time, not maybe very necessary. What about this?
Did you hear the question?
Nej, kan du upprepa frågan?
Yes.
Repeat.
Yeah, there's a question about the future self is already here. So why do we need to have this road or this path to the future self if it's right here? And it's a good question. It's absolutely right that the future self is here as a potential. If my true nature is 100% radiant love and power to be that love, if that's my true self, this is not how I live my life. This is not how I experience myself. I believe that my true potential is to be 100% pure love and will and all the other spiritual qualities. But I'm not able to bring it through yet.
Partially. At seconds or minutes or maybe hours,
Yes?
maybe it's enough
Uh,
to start with.
yeah, to start with, yes. And this is where the will come in.
Yeah.
The will of the soul is like it's like a big hand in your back. And this will of the soul is pushing you out of your comfort zones. It is whispering inside of you, there's more to give. There's more qualities you can express. There's more wisdom inside of you. There's more power. It's like it's like, as Jolie call it, the hound of heaven. And sometimes you can feel that you are that it is following you, you know, and it's creating this internal pressure of you to be all you are able to be. So the will of the soul is working through you as this power to be all you are able to be. And Lasse Jolie uses the image of an oak and the acorn, is it the acorn, the seed of the oak? Yeah. So yes, we all have an ability to be an oak tree, but we have to start to unfold it gradually. And the will is always, and it's like Mandela said in his inauguration speak, that what we really are afraid of is our light, our greatness. Because when we have this awakening and see this tremendous force and this love field, and we compare it to our ordinary life, and we actually have a definition of that. It creates a crisis of duality. We experience this duality between who I am and how my child experienced me, my wife experienced me, and what I know I have potential to be. And there's the duality here. And this is where the future self comes in as a guiding star, and also to bring in some humility and some acceptance of our limitations as a human being. But I am quite in agreement that we are in connection with this potential always.
This is what I mean.
Yeah. So we don't have to create a gap or some kind of separation between me and the future self, because then we put up a barrier. So it's very important that we dare to embrace all the greatness that we have inside of us and still keep our feet on the ground. Because if we don't have the feet on the ground, then we will create a spiritual ego, and we believe that we are some kind of a Superman, a guru, and I'm infallible, and there's so many stories about gurus believing that they are totally enlightened and all types of shit coming out of the ashram, and they are surely not enlightened. So I think it's very important to have this this differentiation between who I am now and what I am in potential. Yes, we are all God in potential, but not in living life. Was that a...
Sure. It's if you just take away the time, the
Yes.
aspect of time, then
Yeah.
it's all here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes?
Or they maybe were first. Did you have a question?
Do you have a question in Göteborg?
Är det någon mer fråga? Nej?
Nej?
No?
Okay, but there's one more question here.
Yeah. So the observer, the loving observer, you define that as the self.
Yes.
Then I wonder, and the will is not a concept; it's a force.
Yeah.
But who? Is it the will that wants by himself? So it's not the will is not a feature. It's just, it's not the self that wants. No?
Yes, it's
Because I always,
understand.
when I think about it, I think about the classic composer standing in front of the audience, or everybody playing the instrument,
yeah,
and then sometimes it has a stick, and that's the will.
yeah,
But for me, now when you explain it,
yeah,
this is more the discipline.
yeah,
And where is the will?
yeah. It's always
That's
yes. It's. Did you hear the question?
No, please repeat it.
Okay. There's a very deep and profound question here. What is the will? Is the will separated from the self? Is it like a stick, you know, the what do you call it, the composer? Or is the will connected with the self? And Assagioli was really he was really profound in his wisdom, because there's not many speaking about the will. For me, the will is also the self. So the self is a loving observer and a director. So there is some kind of, in the core of the self, there is this balance between the masculine and the feminine. There's one part of the self that expand, and I'm not talking about female and male now, okay? I'm talking about energies, because we can have the balance of masculine and feminine in many types. So I'm not going into gender here. It's feminine and masculine energy. The masculine part of the self is the will to be. This is where the self expresses all its potential. The feminine aspect of the self is the love that expands and identifies with more and more, creates wholeness, creates connection, its sensitivity. And I think the best article is the interview Assagioli did with Sam Keen, where he speaks about the self as the masculine and feminine. It's the yin-yang symbol, and it's a universal. It's in India, it's the Shiva Shakti. So you know, in all the Eastern religions, there is this this concept of two different universal forces, and the self is expressing both of them. So when we experience the self as pure consciousness in meditation, then we just experience like we are nothing. It's just like a big, aware, present field of consciousness that has no limits. And if I'm looking there for me, there's no me. This is just the consciousness aspect. And there's many Eastern traditions that just stick with that part of the self. There's nobody. There's just awake. There's just wakefulness, or there's just consciousness. But then if we turn the eye towards who is deciding, who has decided, who has the intention of just sitting here, observing this, then we catch the will, because there is always will, there's always intention. Because I could choose to rise and eat and take a walk or whatever. So even in the most profound meditation and the most state of nothingness, there is an intention to stay in that present state. And this intention, this decision to be right there, is the will. So we cannot escape will, and we cannot escape. It's like they are mixed together. It's a mystery. And if we try to define who am I, if I'm not my story, if I'm not this body, if I'm not all what I have done, who am I then?
I can only say for sure I'm a consciousness, I'm awake, and I am a purpose. It's like looking into, I don't know who I am. I really don't know who I am. I just know I'm this force field. And it's will, it's power, and it's loving consciousness. Was that an answer?
That was a really good end. Thank you.